Welcome to Follow the Money. I'm Eric Bolling. The Obama, yep, I said it, the Obama was on the offensive again today, diving back into the battle of unions versus the taxpayer, the rumble in the cheddar jungle. Why does the president insist on taking a side? Listen.
I don't think it does anybody any good when public employees are denigrated or vilified or their rights are infringed upon.
I have a question for the organizer-in-chief. Why don't you concentrate on fixing your own house instead of blasting American governors trying to fix their fiscal house? This report today from your own Government Accountability Office outlines hundreds of billions of wasted taxpayer dollars. Have you read it, sir? I thought you were going to go through line by line, spending line by line, and eliminate waste. No time? Too busy meeting with your money bags?
How often does the White House, you get have conversations with the White House?
Conversations or via the White House?
Well, yeah, or how about via the White House? I mean,
I'm at the White House a couple of times.
Okay.
2-3 times. I have conversations every day with someone in the White House or in the administration.
More than 90% of the AFL-CIO contributions go to liberals like yourself, sir. What do we get for our money? What do we get? We get entitlements. We get more social programs. We get $18 billion for job training. We get $4 billion to improve teachers' environments. We get 20 federal agencies to improve financial literacy. We get working taxpayers providing for the entitled class, a group who choose to wait until 99 weeks, the 99th week, of watching Oprah on the couch before miraculously finding a job, just as their fattened bennies begin to run out. What we get is socialism, where more and more people are on the cart and fewer of us are left to pull the damn thing. Thanks a lot, Obama. And it doesn't stop there. Union bigs are today in Washington right now for, quote, strategy sessions. One of these sessions is called the Battle of Wisconsin, Lessons and Opportunities. Meanwhile, union heads huddled with senior advisors to the Obama. I wish I could tell you what those advisors told the union bigs. Did they make another behind-the-closed-door deals like the one that got us Obamacare? I wish I could tell you what deals they cut, but I can't. The meeting was closed to reporters. Look, the unions are on their deathbed, on the verge of collapsing due to their own greedy, bloated demands, and we're sick of our president bowing to the likes of Trumka, Stern, and Gelfinger. Meanwhile, those pictures coming out of Wisconsin were dramatic, but how real were they? Did big labor juice those pictures to milk more sympathy for themselves? A member of the AFL-CIO's executive council said, quote, these things rose from the streets of Wisconsin, and if you've got any brains as a leader, you see a parade, you get in front of it. He also said before this thing starts to diminish, we need to make sure it gets a shot of vitamins at all appropriate times. What does that mean? Are labor unions using the protesters for their own purposes? Joining me now, Stuart Acuff from the AFL-CIO and author of Getting America Back to Work. Stuart, I got to tell you, it seems like this is the battle to end all battles. If the unions fail here in Wisconsin, if they fail in Maine, if they fail in Indiana, they're going down, my friend.
No, we're not, Eric, and we're not going to fail. I mean, first, you and your viewers need to realize that this is essentially not a budget battle or an economic battle. It's a political battle. Every state where this fight has been picked, Michigan
is broke,
Indiana
is broke,
Ohio
is broke,
Pennsylvania
is broke,
are states that without the labor movement, Democrats can't win in these states. And so this is an attempt by Republicans to break the back.
Why is it that you on the left always look at it as like an ideological battle when the reality is you're wrong? It's a fiscal battle. These states are broke. I don't hear the states that are fiscally solvent looking to renegotiate with the unions. It's the ones that are broke.
Eric, you're wrong, because in Wisconsin, the unions agreed to take the givebacks, to take the cuts, but the governor proceeded in an ideological fashion to break the union and to break collective bargaining. This is a political battle. It's not a budgetary battle, and Scott Walker has proven it in Wisconsin. And this is an uprising of average workers.
Are we going through this battle when the unions already outpaced the American worker apples to apples? You go across the board in construction. $1,051. Can I get a full screen, guys? Give me the full screen. $1,051 a week for construction workers that are unionized. $692 a week for the ones that aren't. Look at educational services. That includes teachers. If you're union, you're $900 a week. $846 if you're not. Health and social services, $817 if you're unionized. $686. That's just salary, Stuart. We're not talking about the bloated bennies and the job security that come with it. That's ridiculous. You're asking for everything.
No, Eric. We're asking for a middle-class lifestyle and to save the American middle class.
Stuart, stop it with the middle class. Stop it with the middle class. You don't represent the middle class, Stuart. You represent somewhere between 7 and 11% of America, not the middle class.
Your figures just prove my point, that in fact, we need more unions.
More
to
unions.
rebuild the American middle class and to rebuild this economy.
You're on the verge of bankrupting 44 out of the 50 states of the union, Stuart. We need more. You want them all? In fact, that's not a bad idea. Why don't we get more unions, bankrupt the whole country, and start over? That'd be a great way to. That'd be a fresh slate. I'm all for that.
Why do you say having more union members would bankrupt the country? That's ridiculous.
Because you're driving these states.
In 1955, we had
driving these states' budgets into the ground.
In 1955, 1/3 of all workers in this country were union members. Did it bankrupt the country? No. In fact, we used union members to build the interstate highway system.
Well, maybe that was the last time unions were relevant, because they certainly aren't relevant in 2011. Stuart, hang in there for 1 second. I want to bring.
Just proved it.
I want to bring in our all-star panel. On the left, we have Columbia University Professor Mark Lamont Hill, and on the right, Euro-Pacific Precious Metals CEO Peter Schiff and former CIA Covert Operations Officer Mike Baker. Peter, you hear this little conversation going back. You're chuckling. Who's right?
Well, first of all, we should draw a distinction here between the public and the private sector unions, because even FDR, the architect of the New Deal, he was against public sector unions. When you're talking about the middle class,
very important.
The middle class,
important distinction.
The middle class is paying the salaries of these government employees. We are destroying the middle class because we're taxing them to death to fund the bloated pensions and retirement benefits and salaries of the small fraction of our population that is working for the government. And it's not denigrating public employees to recognize that they are overpaid, and on behalf of the taxpayers to rein in those excesses.
Mark, hold on, Stuart. Hang in there. Hang on, Mark Lamont Hill. Peter's right. The number across the workforce, around 12% of the workforce. There's all the Americans watching out there. 12% of them are unionized.
Yeah.
Why does 12% hold 88% hostage?
Well, I don't think it's about holding them hostage. I think, if anything, they hold a standard. Workers' rights, living wages. These are things that all Americans want. And I agree with Stuart. If we expanded unions, we'd have more access to those things. Government employees aren't overpaid. The fact is, other people in the private sector are underpaid. No. They're not always getting access to living wages. That's the fundamental problem.
What creates a living wage is worker productivity, not union demands. Unions are destroying every business they infect. The reason that we've lost so many unions is all the companies that were heavily unionized went bankrupt because they couldn't compete with more competitive companies abroad that had no unions.
Let me get my bacon here. Give us some perspective, my friend.
Yeah. I also like the introduction. We've got Mark on the left. We've got Peter on the right. We've got Mike. We don't know where he is.
He's covert.
Yeah, he's covert. Listen, having worked for the government, the CIA is part of the government. I think that's important to point out. And then having started a business, for the past 9 or 10 years, run a business in the private sector. I'm actually somewhere in the middle. I do believe that the public sector there's a problem. It is bloated, but I'm conflicted because I know a tremendous number of people that work extremely hard in their jobs. Now, having said that, going back to this whole problem, and I do find myself agreeing to some degree with Stuart over one issue.
Which part?
It's a political issue, I think, in a way.
Of course it is.
But I think what they've done.
Democrats don't have the guts to tackle these issues. You've been here for a long time. I don't want to get back to Stuart before we let him go. But Stuart, why is it that in 1950, I assume, and I don't have the numbers from then, I have them from now, but I assume back then, if you worked for the government, you were paid less, but you were given less, you were given more in benefits, you were given more in job security. Now, unionized workers, federal workers, private sector unionized workers are making multiples of what non-unionized workers, and they get the rest. What am I wrong about, Stuart? Come on, I'm not wrong about this.
There's been a study just made in Wisconsin that shows, in fact, the public workers in Wisconsin make less than their private sector counterparts. And that's true across the country. By the way, does anybody on your panel think that firefighters are paid too much? Cops are paid too much? Teachers are paid too much?
Hold on.
Who are we talking
I do.
about here?
Where? I think they are.
I just went through it. Hold on, guys,
Please, public school teachers are paid.
Guys,
Yes,
Mark,
I do. Yes.
Please, fellas, stop. Please. Stuart, I'm going to go. I did this again. We put the full screen up. I have pages and pages of documents showing that unionized versus non-unionized, apples to apples, not apples to oranges like PolitiFact accused me of, and they're wrong. Apples to apples comparison across the board. Unionized workers make more than non-unionized for the same job.
That is right. You're absolutely right. That's why we need more unions to build the middle class. What you said was public employees make more than private sector employees.
And
that's not true.
And they do
union members do make more than non-union members.
And
that's
public
why they're in
employees
a
do
union.
make, in some cases, double what they do elsewhere. Stuart, we're going to have to leave it
not
there.
true.
The governor of Peter, first of all, Ariella is joining the panel. Peter, I want to talk about this a little bit. What Illinois has done, and we didn't intro this, and we didn't get a chance to get to it with William Kelly. They floated a bond. They sold a bond to pay its pension obligation this year. In other words, they're buying time. They're paying off. It's almost a Ponzi scheme. It's like it's something Madoff might do.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's common throughout the municipalities and states around the union and the federal government itself. You know, and they don't have to account for this. They're borrowing to pay current expenses, and now they dig themselves into a deeper hole. This has to end, and I think it's going to be brought to an end soon by the markets, because I think interest rates are headed much higher.
Look what they did, Lamont Hill. You're shaking your head, but here's what they had to do. They had to go pay an effective 6.1% rate on this $3.7 billion. Work with me here a little bit. $3.7 billion bond offering. The rate they ended up paying was about 6.1%. Almost double the junk bond status. In other words, investors are saying Illinois is so freaking broke. They're going to have to pay double just to raise the money.
It's fiscally irresponsible. It's unwise. I don't dispute that. What I was shaking my head at was the Bernie Madoff comparison.
It's different.
Not the analysis. And I think Mike and I actually agree on that. But for me, the fundamental question here is, what do we do long term from workers who have taken salary cuts for decades for the purpose of having pensions, who've become public employees, for example?
Public employees aren't taking salary cuts. Their salaries have been rising for decades.
No,
that's the point.
Just a few weeks ago here in Illinois, we were talking about people, and we were talking about pulling back job benefits, salary benefits.
After years and years of raising them.
For example.
Instead, Mark, I'm sorry, apologize, but instead, Illinois didn't do that. They raised the personal income tax 66%. Hang in there, guys. Let me get Artie. You're listening to some of this stuff. It's craziness.
The noise is
sneak in here, by the way.
So, I don't know. I just tiptoed through the tulips. Look, Eric, hats off to you for really focusing this, targeting this. You're right when you talk about it's a Ponzi scheme, but it's accepted. Because it's a public Ponzi scheme as opposed to a private Ponzi scheme, and they're public schemes. It's the way we do business. We basically rob Peter to pay Paul, and it's got to end. And you're right. A school teacher, and my sister's a school teacher. God bless her. When my mom was a school teacher, she made $5,000. My sister now makes $90,000.
And she only works for 9 months.
Hold on,
He thinks it's too much.
Baker, you imagine being hold on. You imagine being a resident of the state of Illinois, knowing that your government is selling bonds at double the rate that they could be selling them at junk bond, less than junk value. That's what you have to look forward to.
Well,
That's what your kids have to look
I live
forward
in
to.
Connecticut, and Connecticut's a mess, right? I mean, not only that, but we're in the top 3 of paying taxes, state and local. But I'm going to come at this from a different direction. I think that the Republicans have actually done the math wrong on this. I think that what this has done now, overall, the big picture, the fact that we're talking about this so much, that this has risen to the top, I think what this has done is it's awakened all those voters that the Democrats and the Obama administration were worried, how are they going to get them out and show up for 2012?
They don't care.
They do.
I
guarantee you this is going to come back and
where
bite the
Obama's going to get his money. He's going to get his war chest. He's going to get it from Trump. Get a finger. Well, get a fingers out now. But go ahead, Peter. Last thought.
Well, it's not just that the interest that they're paying. They got to pay back the principal one day on top of everything else that they owe.
30 years down the road.
No. But what's going to happen when interest rates rise? What happens when they're paying 10% or 12% or 15% to try to sell these bonds? What happens when this whole thing implodes? Ponzi schemes don't work just because the government runs them. They can work for longer because you have the law forcing people to participate, but eventually it falls apart, and the results are just as disastrous.
We fundamentally disagree on this. What we agree on is that it's fiscally unwise and there has to be a long-term strategy. But your strategy is to take everything away from workers, and that's my.
Your strategy is to take everything away from taxpayers, private sector workers, and transfer it to the government.
Again, coming up in my weekly slugfest with Verge Bonero, the angriest mayor in America. According to the Government Accountability Office, government overlap is costing taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars. Take a look at some of these bloated programs, including 47 programs for job training and 20 offices devoted to homelessness and many, many more idiotic, wasteful programs, too numerous to mention. Here's what Oklahoma Senator Tom Coburn had to say about the findings. Quote, "This report will make us look like jackasses. Go study that. It'll show you why we're $14 trillion in debt." Let's bring it out to the panel. Artie, here's the report. 37 pages of overlaps, bloat. I thought we were going to get line-by-line cuts. Go.
And what people should know, because this is really important, GOA is a nonpartisan entity, so they're supposed to be looking at this in a very neutral way. It's ineptitude. I mean, it goes back to what we're saying about the free market. If I ran my law practice like this, if we ran Fox News like this, we'd all be bankrupt. We'd all be, it's not corruption, it's ineptitude. It's just stupidity, it's laziness, it's all the words you want to put in there. Lack of attention to detail.
Speaking of attention to detail, Obama on the campaign trail in 08 said, I'm going to go line by line. I'm going to cut spending, waste, fraud, and abuse line. But here it is. Here's a chance. They found hundreds of billions of dollars.
Some of the things, well, two things. One, he hasn't done that, right? We can all agree that there's still plenty of fat here. There's still plenty of things that could be cut out. There's plenty of overlap. That's a problem. However, some of the things on that list, and I've looked at some of them, I don't think it's necessarily overlap. I think some of them are necessary, but there's still billions of dollars of things that shouldn't be there.
In all fairness, you're right. They're not outlining every dollar that's spent. They're saying, well, if there's $5 billion here, and then there's another program spending $4 billion on the same program, maybe they could cut that, maybe make it 7 instead of 9.
No, perhaps, but that's different. For example, with teacher quality, we have all these multiple programs. There are multiple programs with multiple foci, right? That's okay. I'm not against that. However, on the whole, we're spending billions of dollars unnecessarily. I think we're all in agreement here. It's a problem.
What were you saying about CIA? You said you want to
get rid of CIA. That's the first on my list, man.
The CIA is about as efficient. I mean, our budget is probably the size of your salary, quite frankly, Eric. But you know what? We're going to end up with 12 commissions to study this problem, first of all. That's what they're going to do. They're going to form multiple commissions to resolve how to get to the bottom of this thing. Having spent time in the federal government, the idea that there's redundancy, the idea that there's overspend, it's shocking. I'm stunned.
Look, what do you expect? This is government. There's always waste in government. That's par for the course. That's why you want to minimize how much government spends.
You want to get rid of everything, though.
Because you don't have the market forces.
So what do we get rid of? What do we
talked about. We need to focus on more than just a couple $100 billion in waste. Even if we can get rid of all that waste, we still have a massive deficit well in excess.
So what do we cut?
We have to cut everything. We got to dramatically shrink government.
Department of what?
We got to cut defense. We got to cut
energy.
We got to cut the Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. We got to slash government spending.
No, the White House could be a little smaller. Maybe they can hang out in the house.
The government is almost spending $4 trillion a year. We don't have the money. We're borrowing $1.6
You said you would cut national defense in half.
We have to cut it. In fact, we can cut our Defense Department in half.
You honestly believe this nation would be safe in defense?
Wait, I got to step in now. I got to step in. Wait.
We got to cut Social Security. We got to cut Medicare.
You can't seriously be talking about cutting the defense budget in half. But I will say,
it's absurd.
Service by service, and there's been a tradition in the military for as long as the military's been around. Each service wants to maintain its own territory, right? Its own development programs. So you do get waste in here because it has not been sufficiently streamlined. Now, I will say this to Defense Secretary Gates. Of all the people in the Obama administration at this point, and he, of course, came from previous administration, he does seem to be more focused on this in a practical manner than anybody else.
The main thing the federal government should do is defense. Everything else needs to be cut by war.
We need guns, right? We need muskets. That'll do it. Come on.
I just want to talk like a businessman. And as a businessman, if we ran this like a business, if you had to cut, Doc, if you had to cut 10%, 20%, you'd still figure out a way to make it work.
But this isn't
maybe not an ideally way.
But
why can't we run it like the private sector? It's my money. It's my tax money. Why should it be treated like the private sector? Why should there be that waste? It's my hard-earned money. If you're going to take it, then use it the best possible way you can. There's no excuse for that.
Because in the private sector, efficiency is the only thing we're worried about, right? Maximizing profit, right? If I were to take that same approach to schools, it might be cheaper to not spend twice as much money educating kids, but to let them fail.
The private schools do a better job of educating kids.
Here's my point. The free market has winners and losers. There are certain aspects of the public sector where you cannot have winners
and losers. And the real losers are the kids that are stuck in those public schools where there is no profit incentive and they get no education.
And it doesn't work in the private sector.
Schiff's arm. Are you working out? You're huge. Got to leave it there. Up next, the latest on Libya as the U.S. warships position themselves in the region. Follow the money. Things continue to get hotter in Libya. U.S. warships with hundreds of Marines on board are heading in. Aircraft on the way. $30 billion in assets frozen, ramping up pressure to get a delusional and dangerous Gaddafi to give up power. Let's welcome terrorism expert Eric Stakelbeck. Eric, as I guess as the Middle East burns, our pump prices are going up. What's the latest? What are you hearing?
Oh, Eric, absolutely. Already we see a sharp increase in oil prices. Look, Libya obviously is sitting on a massive amount of oil. And as this spreads, Eric, this is like dominoes in the Middle East. As this spreads, even to the Gulf region, even to Bahrain. The big question in my mind, Libya is bad enough. What if this spreads to Saudi Arabia? That's a big question. I can tell you right now the Saudi royal family is petrified as they survey what's going on in those neighboring countries in the Middle East. Libya might only be the beginning. I don't see how oil prices don't spike sharply as a result of all this. And the chaos in Libya may just be beginning.
Eric,
Gaddafi,
let me ask you, why
guy.
hasn't it spread?
What comes after him?
Why haven't the Saudis seen any of the protesters in the street? We're hearing in almost every country in the Middle East and northern Africa. Why is it, did I hear this right, where the Saudi government declared almost a dividend to the people? He was actually paying them to stay calm?
Yeah, I think number one, it's almost bribery on the Saudis' part, Eric. They are devoting billions now to programs within Saudi Arabia. Magically, this all just occurred, and this idea just came to the Saudi royal family last week as Bahrain next door was blowing up. But look, the Saudis are very, very repressive. Right now, there's actually Saudi tanks in Bahrain, right next door to Saudi Arabia, trying to put down the revolt there. The Saudis will pull out all the stops. When they saw Mubarak fall, they knew the writing may be on the wall.
Eric, hang in there. Hang in there. Peter Schiff, I'm going to take it out to you. Oil up $2.66 a barrel today alone, almost $100 a barrel, based on a small producing country.
It's not based on Gaddafi and Libya. It's based on Ben Bernanke and the Federal Reserve. Look, oil prices are actually rising more slowly than a lot of other commodities. In fact, oil prices are falling in terms of gold. They're plunging in terms of silver. That is inflation. It's not terror.
On the same page with the gold price, the oil price, the commodity price, but you can't tell me that it didn't rise $2.66 today because $2.66 today because there was word that the Libyan oil fields
I
were
say
shut
it's because Ben Bernanke talked and people listened to what he had to say and they got scared and they went and bought gold and they bought oil.
You don't think the TV screen filled with Libyan protesters has something to do with it?
No, Ben Bernanke. Hang on.
You know, I don't think it's about Ben Bernanke. I think what you're seeing with the price rise is it's not so much about Libya. It's about Oman. It's about Bahrain. It is potentially about Saudi Arabia.
Why is it not about Saudi now, though? Or is it?
Well, Saudi is a much different animal. Yeah. They are don't read too much into this, but they're a softer regime. They're a softer hold on the people.
You mean they pay their people?
It's a very conservative.
There's
a very conservative religious bent there, which also keeps things tamped down. And in fact, yes, sure, they pay a dividend, but the oil revenues over the years, that's how they have managed to keep that audience or that population.
Go ahead, Artie, weigh in here.
If it goes down, you tell me, Eric. I mean, we're done.
Here's what I'll tell you. Lamont Hill, if we were able to drill our own oil, we have 20 years from now, though, right? 2,000 years worth of oil in Bracken.
Is this going to be your offshore argument? Okay,
onshore, right here. Don't even worry about your favorite thing, the fish, 200 miles out to sea.
Right, the environment, right? The ecosystem, I know, those crazy things. Here's the point. I agree. Onshore drilling, I'm with you. We actually agree on that. We also, actually, I think this is the first time where I'm not the wingnut on here. It's this guy right here. I happen to think that this has nothing to do with Bernanke. This is everything to do with Libya. It has everything to do with Saudi Arabia.
Look, as somebody who's actually drilling in the Bakken myself, I've got wells in there. I'm drilling for myself, for my clients, and I own oil. I own oil stocks. You know why I'm doing that? You know why I'm buying it? It's not because of Libya. It is because of Ben Bernanke. I've been buying oil stocks for years, and oil because of the central bank, because of Greenspan, and now Bernanke.
But the rest of humanoids on the planet are responding to these uprisings in North Africa and Saudi Arabia.
But my point is, do you own any oil? Have you bought any oil?
Hold on. Just something apropos of not what Peter's talking about. With Saudi, I will say this: over the past couple of decades now, the intel community, the CIA in particular, and others have been studying what's going to happen when that royal house falls. And so we've been looking at scenarios now, year after year after year. Task forces are meeting and saying, okay, what's going to happen? What is the scenario? Well, there's several different ways this thing is going to go. But I guess my point being is that, well, all hell breaks loose and oil spikes, and we've got to go in there with
Have you looked into what happens if the House of Saud falls?
Well, I think what happens at the House of Saud falls, likely there will be possibly an even more radical type regime coming to power. And that's the elephant in the room here, guys. When it comes to all of these regimes toppling, who comes next? I interviewed a former member of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group last year. This was a terrorist group linked to al-Qaeda. He told me, look, right now we have a truce with Gaddafi, but now that this unrest is breaking out in Libya, is that truce off? Do radical jihadists become more powerful there and in other countries throughout the Middle East?
Lamont Hill, what happens if there is protesting in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia? Where does the Obama come out on that side?
He has a tough decision to make, the same way he did with Egypt. But ultimately, I think he's going to give the same pseudo-democratic, bizarre rhetoric, which is the people and democracy should stand and hope and change.
Thank you for classifying it as it is. Pseudo, bizarro rhetoric.
Eric,
that's exactly what it is. With regard to you can make the same argument with Egypt, right? In terms of national security with relationship.
Let me ask my experts here. Baker and Stakelback, very quickly. Sure. When Saddam Hussein was ready to fall in Kuwait and Iraq, he lit the Kuwaiti oil fields on fire. There was rumors that Gaddafi might do that in Libya. Would that ever happen in Saudi Arabia? Because I'll tell you, if that happened, you're talking a doubling of the price of oil.
No. I mean, again, this, how speculative is this? But I think the short answer is no. That would not happen. You would not see that. You have to remember, it's not a perfect domino theory. Each of these countries is operating under some very unusual conditions, each one. And so you can't just say it happens here, it's going to happen in all these other countries.
Does he light does King Abdullah light the Saudi oil fields on fire if he's going down?
I don't think so, Eric. I think that's a stretch. Gaddafi, on the other hand, all bets are off the table.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. We're going to say thank you to Eric Stakelback for joining us. I asked you a question on Facebook today, and we got a ton of responses. Some of your answers next when Follow the Money returns. Welcome back to Follow the Money. 2 whack jobs, 1 flight, 1 desperate choice. If you were stuck on an airplane, who would you rather sit next to, wackadoo Charlie Sheen or nutjob union boss Richard Trumka? That was the question on Facebook. Responses were wild. Jeannie says I would jump out of the plane. Carol says Sheen, at least the ride would be amusing. Jeff says Sheen, although he would probably go to the bathroom 10 times and have a runny nose. Bernie writes, if it were Sheen, it would be kind of nice because instead of sitting in a seat, he'd be too busy making the rounds to other passengers trying to buy a dime bag, thus more room to stretch out and relax. Rose says, I'd rather sit next to Trumka so I could tell him exactly what I thought of him and his communist agenda. Telling Charlie anything would be like talking to your napkin. Lenny says, Trumka, of course, so I could ask him, just who the hell do you think you are trying to ruin our republic? Dean says, Sheen by far, Trumka's evil, a communist, a traitor. Lamont Hill, who would you rather sit next to?
I'm going with Trumka, man.
Yeah, what would you tell him?
He'd raise the accommodations on the flight, man. He'd probably pay less, get more extra peanuts and stuff. Union people know how to make stuff happen, man.
The pilots are unionized.
Yeah, exactly.
Flight
Join on
attendants
that.
are unionized.
Exactly.
That's why my ticket prices are going up, Peter.
I don't know. Probably Charlie Sheen. Maybe I can get his brokerage account. If he,
I
got a better chance of probably getting that than getting the union account.
Baker?
Well, you know what? It's got to be Sheen, but I'm sure I'd have to lose my seat because he'd have a porn star with him. So, you know, I'd be sitting out back. Yeah, I'd be out back somewhere.
Well, I was going to say Trump because he's more interesting to talk to, but as a criminal defense attorney, I guess I should sit next to Sheen. I mean, the chances of me getting a little work out of that is probably pretty high.
Is he going to live? Is he going to survive this
thing?
thing?
The drugs, the prostitute. Is he crazy like a fox at this point, though, Eric? Has his value gone through the roof? Today, the head of CBS says he wants the show back.
All right, this says thank you, Artie Idella, Mike Baker, Peter Schiff, and my friend, the professor. Can I call you that?
Can I call you a host?
Mark Lamont. He's on tonight. See you guys. See you tomorrow.